Thank you for joining us today for the Washburn McGoldrick podcast entitled The Power of Women's Philanthropy. Hello, I am Susan Pettyjohn, a senior consultant for Washburn McGoldrick, and I'm here with my colleague, Carme Williams, who is also a senior consultant. Plus, we have two wonderful volunteers, Janet Atwater from the College of William and Mary and Gayle Lanier from NC State University. You know, a focus on philanthropy by women has been an interest of mine since I began working in higher education and advancement at William and Mary in the early 90s. I began noticing that women were stepping up and giving more. And as a result, I wrote my master's thesis on this topic. Plus, in my 26 years of working in higher education, I have had the honor to work with some amazing women philanthropists and witnessed the impact of their giving. This is carried over to my work as a consultant at Washburn McGoldrick. Plus, I have been a member of the William and Mary's Women Philanthropy Group, the Society of 1918, for the past 6 years and served on their steering committee. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Carme now to tell you a little bit about herself, and then we'll introduce our guest.
Hi there. I am Carme Williams, and I am a graduate of North Carolina State University. I was always fond of the university. I have two nephews and a niece that are also alums of the institution. However, it wasn't until I was requested to get engaged with the institution that I really became involved in a meaningful way. And I was asked to join Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy. And I was a part of the leadership team that was allowed to be the first inaugural chair of the philanthropy committee for Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy. What I learned and what has been so rewarding in the space of being a consultant with Washburn McGoldrick, I've been able to work with other institutions, and I see how women make a difference and how when women are involved, they are very focused on the impact and what they can do at the institution. And so being a part of Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy has really given me the opportunity to see up close and personal in an engagement seat to see the power of women philanthropy.
Thanks, Carme. So we're recording this today, The Power of Women's Philanthropy, in honor of Women's History Month. And on March 8th is International Women's Day. So we're going to be joined here, as I said, we are joined here with Gayle Lanier and Janet Atwater. And again, they're wonderful volunteers. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Janet, and then Carme's going to tell you a little bit more about Gayle. I've known Janet since the mid to late 90s. She's always been a dedicated and active volunteer for William and Mary. First with the Annual Fund Board, then with the Alumni Board, and now she's the chair of the William and Mary Foundation. And yes, she served as the chair of the Society of 1918 too. Janet has an impressive professional career as well. She's the executive director and a workforce development instructor for the Precision Institute. She has 30 plus years of experience in training and development and 25 years in nonprofit leadership and management. She holds a Bachelor of Arts from William and Mary and an MBA from RPI. So we're just thrilled you could join us. And so now Carme's going to tell you a little bit more about Gayle.
Yes, Susan, I must tell you, Gayle is the reason that I became active with Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy. My name had come up, but Gayle was like, I need you to make a phone call. And so Gayle's leadership skills have been there from the very beginning of being an active participant with Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy. And what I want to share about Gayle is a graduate of NC State with a bachelor's degree in industrial engineer. Gayle has over 30 years of experience as a transformational business executive at Fortune 500 companies. She brings a wealth of education, experience, and knowledge to Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy. Gayle has served on several boards within NC State, serving on the Board of Trustees, which is the highest governing board for the university. Gayle has served on the Board of Visitors. She's also served on the Shelton Leadership Board of Advisors, the Engineering Foundation Board. This is just to name a few of the impact that Gayle has had across the University of North Carolina State. Also, I want to share, Gayle was recognized as a Distinguished Engineering Alumnus of the Year in 2008 and received the highest university award, which is the Watauga Award, in 2017. These are just a few outstanding accomplishments Gales has achieved while at NC State, and I could go on and on. I must share, most recently, Gail and her husband made a very substantial gift to support women's athletic. We will talk a little bit about that later today, but I just want to share Gail is currently serves as the chair of Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy. We are so pleased that you have joined us today, and it's been an honor to serve with Gail in this capacity with our Women in Philanthropy Committee. So now I want to jump right into the questions, if we may. And Gail, I'd like for you to just share with us, why was your women's philanthropy group started, and what has been the impact to date that Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy have had on NC State?
Thank you again. So if you look at the progression of female students coming on to NC State, we've reached a tipping point where more than 50% of the incoming freshmen were women. And in 2017, the Vice Chancellor of Advancement, along with the Chancellor, met with two key women, one of our top donors, as well as the Chancellor's wife, who is also an avid supporter of NC State, and said, how can we get women more involved in the decision-making and philanthropy at NC State as this population continues to change? So we put together an inaugural group of 40 women, 40 already devoted women to NC State who were already philanthropic in their desire to support the university. And we modeled other existing women philanthropy groups across the US to find out what they were doing and how they had set up their organizations. With that, we kicked off officially in 2020 as Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy. And we've been really focusing on how do we educate women about philanthropy? How do we harvest the fact that women give differently and for more meaningful purposes? But they are also becoming more involved in the decision-making about philanthropy, whether it's in business or in the home. So how can we really harvest that and work with individuals to help develop the culture of philanthropy at NC State as we move forward? So we have a leadership council now. We focus on impactful giving, meaningful engagement, amazing education, and really focusing on how to get women into the pipeline of being influential leaders across the university. So that's a lot that's been said about how we got started. But in this short time, I do want to share some of the real benefits that we've seen to the university. We've had a day of giving. Our fifth one just finished last year. We're coming up on our sixth annual day of giving this March. Since we've started in 2020, since 2020 to 2023, we have increased the number of women donors, individual donors, by over 18%. That's huge because we know that these are women who want to become more involved and more engaged with NC State. One of the other things that we really focus on is how do we get women into leadership positions? How do we create a pipeline of women in the key boards across the university? When we started this, we had about 30% female population on these major boards. That increased to 33% in 2021 because we focused, we published the data, and we set the expectation that we want these boards to look like the representation of the student body that we serve. So we need to be moving closer to 50%. As of the end of 2023, that number has increased to 38%. Now that may not seem like a big step, but to go from 30 to 38% in just 2 or 3 years has really been significant. And that's because we've had the support of not only the Vice Chancellor of Advancement, but we've also had the support of the Chancellor. We published the data. We have become a resource for boards as they're looking for pipelines, as terms are ending and they're looking for additional people to come on. So we've had that amount of impact. We also partner with other university existing groups, whether they be Feed the Pack, again, things that are important to women, how they can make a difference, the Women's Center, and any initiative that's been around mental health has been a real focus for our organization and partnering with those groups across the university. So a lot more to do as we continue to take these baby steps, but we've been pleased thus far with the progress we've made.
Thank you, Gail. Janet, would you share about why there's a women philanthropy group at William and Mary?
A good 10, 12 years ago, a group of women came together and said they recognized that there was a disparity in giving between men and women, the way we give, the way we think about giving, et cetera. And so it went to at the time, the head of advancement and the president of the university and said, we think there's something there, and we would really like to focus time, energy, and resources in that. And to William and Mary's credit, they actually hired their very first ever staff member that would focus on women's philanthropy. The reason we're called the Society of 1918 is William Mary is 331 years old, but William Mary only had women attend starting in 1918. So we're only about 106 years of co-ed education. So we thought it was appropriate that Society of 1918 would focus on the year that William Mary allowed women to finally walk through the doors. And the focus originally was to try to get 100 women to give $10,000 each over a 5-year period to create $1 million endowment. That was the goal. We knocked that out of the park in less than 2 months. And so then the goal increased to 1.918 for 1918 and did that automatically. So all of a sudden we recognized we were hitting a nerve, we were hitting something that people were very interested in. And the whole purpose of the Society of 1918 was to increase leadership, engagement, and philanthropy across the university. So at this point in time now, at 2024, it's been about 10 years in the making that we launched finally in 2018. We now have 613 members. We have raised $5.6 million in endowment. Another thing we've done is, to Gail's point, we wanted parity on boards. And so we have grown from 34% in the years that the Society of 1918 has been in existence. In the 6 years we've been in existence, we've gone from 34% to 50% on boards. And just as importantly, we are at 50%, if not a little bit greater, as women leaders on boards, because our concern was we didn't just want the token representation, we wanted to have the gavel in our hands and the power in to actually make change within these committees. So we're extremely excited about that. In addition, we're trying to engage women. So the Society of 1918 actually is under the umbrella of what we're calling William and Mary Women. And with that, we have hosted over 130 in-person and virtual events and have had over 12,000 registrations. So the idea of impacting a wide variety of women everywhere from faculty and staff and students on campus to every corner of the United States and the globe. A couple of the other impacts that we've had is that we just finished a major capital campaign, which Washburn McGoldrick has been very, very involved with, called it For the Bold. We raised $1 billion. Of that $1 billion, women gave 551 million of that billion. So we actually gave 51% of the total goal, which is amazing. And also for engagement purposes, we have launched a Navigating Life Transitions recently. We have 2 cohorts, most of whom are not members of the Society of 1918. They are just William and Mary Women. And then one is for mid-career transitions, and the other is for navigating life transitions. So we've got a cohort that are probably in their 20s to late 30s. They're looking at marriage and family and balancing work and promotions, et cetera. And then another group, a cohort that's probably 50 to 75 plus, and they're looking at everything from retirement to what's my second or third act to dealing with grief and loss and all of those sorts of things. So that's been very exciting. The other thing we launched this past year, which was very exciting, was an alumni initiatives grant program. So because of the alumni initiatives being at 5.6 million, we've been able to spin off the expendable dollars, and we had expendable dollars of about $45,000 this past year to give in grants. So we were able to support 10 different grant organizations across the university, again, faculty, staff, students, student groups, etc. So we've done everything from helping a mental health app come into being. There's a documentary being done about people of color in Williamsburg that were displaced, and there's a whole documentary that's being done with faculty, staff, students, and the Williamsburg community. We've got something happening at the School of Marine Sciences. There's a piece of music that's being commissioned for the treble choir at William and Mary that will focus on women's voices, etc. So lots and lots of things happening, and we feel like we are just getting started.
Well, it's clear that both of these organizations have done some amazing things and have already had an impact. And what Janet didn't mention, that she and I just attended an event that is held for society members. It was on Friday, and we call it Gather, Grow, Give. And we included not just society members, but we included students and we included guests, and we had over 160 women that attended this, and also got to see some of the information about the grantees and what they're doing with their money. So there's a lot going on from both places, it's clear. But I'm curious now about, what do you see, for going forward? What are the goals and what do you see for the future? Janet, I'll ask you first to talk about what you see for the future of the society.
We were just discussing this again at this last, we now call it G3 because Gather, Grow, Give got to be unwieldy. So we know it's called the G3. But what we're looking at is what's possible. So at one point we thought $1 million an endowment was enough. Then we thought was $5 million enough. And we've decided there's no limit to what we want to raise, because the more we can raise an endowment, the greater impact we can make. We've also changed it. We started talking by women, for women, and now we're saying by women, for William and Mary, or through William and Mary. So trying to make as broad of an impact as possible. So now we're talking about how can we grow the initiative, the alumni initiatives endowment even greater? How do we expand our memberships so that we are not just seen as a group of only high level philanthropists, but that every dollar counts, and that you can give. People talk about their time, talent, treasures, testimony, etc. I've always liked the W's for women: work, wealth, and wisdom. And witness. So to me, I really want to expand our W's throughout William and Mary's philanthropy. We're looking at everything from could we endow some scholarships or a professorship. We're also looking at some sort of physical manifestation on campus. I don't know about NC State, but at William and Mary, there's a lot of statues on campus, and they're all, not to be rude, but white men. That's then usually several hundred years old. So we would love to have something that represents, and it doesn't have to be a specific bronze sculpture of a woman or whatever, but something that represents the vibrancy that having women on campus brings to the entire experience. We're also looking at potentially finding ways to create what we're doing now at the college level. We're talking right now sort of in a general way, could we do sort of a quote unquote junior society of 1918, where from freshman year on, we start to build these philanthropic leadership and engagement muscles, working with student leaders and across campus. So really truly building a culture of philanthropy and a culture of engagement across generations. So that's just some of the things that we're looking at.
Okay, Gail, how about Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy? What do you see for the future or the goals for the organization going forward?
It's very interesting because our starting point was very different than the approach that Janet and William and Mary took. We wanted to make sure that we were inclusive of all women who had given to NC State, whether they gave $10 or $10 million. So we don't have a fund today. Remember, we're still in our infancy. We're just getting started here. But we've been focusing on how we build sustainability, longevity in what we're doing. So we are creating policies and procedures. We're operationalizing how we turn our leadership council. We're also now really having the conversation about, is a foundation, is a fund really what we need to really have permanence with this organization? We've had those initial conversations and we're starting to think, well, how do we structure that so that we're still inclusive of all women? So today, Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy encompasses any woman who's given to NC State. We'll take men too that are supportive of the initiative, but I'm going to say our short-term goal in the next 5 years is really, do we have a fund? How do we structure it so that it is very inclusive of all women at different levels? And then how do we define how those funds would be used, the residual of the corpus to be used as we move forward? What's most important to the women of NC State as we look forward? So we've got a lot of work that's underlying right now that's going on in support of that. While we're doing that, we're still continuing our educational series. We've had some phenomenal speakers who have come in and who have talked about women in the workplace. We had a McKinsey report that came out last year. Laura Gardner joined us several times and did webinars on that report. And then we had discussions and actions about what we could do. We had a phenomenal opportunity. Now, I'm telling you, when you get 40 women who are all, excelling in their careers, but you get them in a room with a NASA astronaut, Christina Cook, and you get to talk to her one-on-one about her success, where she is in her career, her philanthropy to NC State. You find out what's important to her. You have 40 women who were really in awe of this one woman. So we continue those series on education around what's going on in the environment, because we know that that starts engagement, and engagement leads to philanthropy. And then one of the things that's been a highlight that we want to continue and grow are our series around why people give, education around the different means of being philanthropic, what that means, how do you go about that. We've had several well-attended webinars on that. We also had the opportunity to partner with the Provost's office and talk about the future of NC State over the next 5 to 10 years. Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy sponsored that because we want to be able to address what are the big things that need to be done as we move forward, how Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy can partner with different organizations to do that and become more engaged. So in the next 5 years, operationalizing, do we need a fund, continuing the education, and partnering with other organizations across the university to solve the big problems that are here today.
Thank you so much. Thank both of you. And what I find so interesting is both of the programs have been very successful at each one of your institutions, but they're not cookie cutter. You've created them that mix with your alumni base. You found a way to bring them closer and engage them intentionally. And so I'd like to ask you, what advice do you have for someone that is getting ready to start a new program, or colleges and universities that are thinking about starting a Women in Philanthropy program? What advice would you share with them of how they could get started? I'm going to start with Gayle, and then we'll go to Janet.
We had so much fun doing this. So I think the first thing is to make sure you have fun when you create it. It is very important to have the support of your senior leadership within the university, whether it's the president, the chancellor, whoever is over your advancement or development offices. I think that those two factors were very, very key to us. We learned along the way to make sure we had a mixture of talent within our organization, within our core leadership group. So we started off, and I'll be honest, we started off with a bunch of female engineers who said, we're going to get this done. You know, it was like, this is not going to take us 5 years. We can do this. We're going to do it in a couple of years and get it started. But as you move forward, it does help to have people with differing backgrounds, with marketing experience, communication experience, because you're going to need all of those people to really give you a well-rounded program. Find women who have time on their hands. When you're starting off, it takes a lot of commitment. It takes a lot of time to really build an organization. We interviewed and investigated over 12 of the existing women philanthropy programs at other colleges to figure out what they were doing so that we could learn from the best and figure out what worked best for NC State. That took a lot of time and dedication. So I think having women who are already devoted, already engaged, already excited, who want to have fun, who want to make a difference, built upon a foundation of the institution's leadership who are very supportive, is really what we found to be lessons learned and great foundations for us.
Thank you, Gayle. Janet, what would you share?
So a lot of what Gayle was saying, certainly we would never have gotten off the ground if we hadn't had the senior leadership commitment. I can tell you, hiring Val Cushman, who is the woman who heads up the women's initiatives, was transformational. To have someone dedicated to helping us grow that program was amazing, because as much as we had passionate volunteers, to have somebody boots on the ground there at the institution that could navigate all of those things, it's truly incredibly important in that regard. So Val has been amazing. We had a group of very, very committed volunteers as well. We already had a wide variety of backgrounds, which was nice. Some of that just kind of was serendipitous, and some was calculated in that regard. So we had somebody who had a background that could look at the bylaws, and somebody that was a marketing communications, and of course most of the women were all leaders in their own way, shape, or form. We made a major commitment to making sure we had intergenerational leadership, so that in our first steering committees we had geographical representation. We had both in terms of regions around the country, but also class representation and all of those sorts of things. So really tried from the very beginning to be as much a mosaic of William and Mary as we could be. One thing I would suggest, we are trying still to make the tent bigger. Always, sort of to Gayle's perspective, there was a conscious decision made to focus on basically higher levels of philanthropy. It's a $2,000 a year commitment for 5 years, or $10,000. That's for, but if you're right out of college, if you're a young guard member, we call that the first 5 to 10 years of your postgraduate. It's half that. It's $5,000, so only $1,000 a year for 5 years. And then faculty and staff, the same thing. We present. It's a 50% reduction to get those folks in the door. And then for students, if anybody's interested there, it's $1,000 over 5 years. So $200 a year, which basically equates to a couple of Starbucks coffees a month. So we figured that one out as well. So we're trying to broaden that, and to make it as the one lesson learned was we initially asked for a $10,000 commitment to the Alumni Initiatives Endowment. We found that after a while there was some pushback of that people were giving across campus, and so they wanted to be able to give to what they wanted to give to. So we've now changed that. So 80% of your $10,000 commitment can go to anywhere you want across campus. 20% just goes to the Alumni Initiatives Endowment, so we can continue to grow that. I think that was a big lessons learned that we evolved for that. Another thing that I would say we've learned is when you write your bylaws, if you do operationalize, make sure that you are being very as broad as you can possibly be, so that if you do want to spend your fund, you are not tripped up with, we've had some Title IX things that we had to be careful about, because you can't just give to women's causes, etc. So I would be very careful when you're creating your bylaws and your fund in particular, that the language is as broad as possible.
Carme, there's one other thing that I neglected to mention that was key for us when we were doing this, and still important to us today. we have a phenomenal group of staff that support these volunteers. And if you don't have good staff within the university to work with you every day, you're not going to be successful. So I can't thank that team for the work that they did to get us to where we are today, but more importantly, what they continue to do every day for us. So I think having a great staff is important, and I'd be really remiss if I didn't bring that up.
And I should add that we've grown our staff. It started with Val. She was a one woman band, and we now have, I believe, 4 people that are focused on not just the women's philanthropy piece, but some other affinity groups, if you will. But yeah, they make us look great, and that's the only way we can do what we do is because of that amazing staff. And it doesn't hurt. We have a female president for the first time ever after 300, it only took 320 some odd years, but we finally have a female president. So, and she's a member of the Society of 1918. Her daughter is also a member. Her mother is a member. So to have that level of commitment has also been huge.
And I think it's great that you have that dedicated person, and I know Val has made a difference. And at NC State, there's been multiple people. So there's like 5 or 6 people because it's been tagged on to some of their already responsibilities. And so when an institution is starting out, it's, we understand that you don't have that direct FTE position just for this, but you can still make it work by bringing multiple people and sharing that responsibility. And I think that's something that NC State did really well, of identifying multiple people in different roles from the frontline fundraising as well as the alumni, to bring the group together and to manage it. Because not having, without having the staff, I don't think the program would be as successful as it is today.
I think your leadership team needs to realize that it is a front end commitment, but the ROI is extraordinary. And I'm not talking just the monetary ROI, but which it is, but just in terms of, we're seeing engagement in women that have never, ever, ever were engaged with Women Marry. And for the first time ever, they saw something when they saw By Women for Women that spoke to them. Or the Gather, Grow, Give that Susan was talking about. We have people come about, and that is something that we offer to all women. We are programming, we do have some Society of 1918 specific events, but a lot of our events are completely any woman affiliated with Women Marry, whether you're faculty, staff, student, parent, anything that happens to be. We're just trying to get those tentacles of engagement as far out as we possibly can, knowing that if we can engage them, to your point, Gayle, they'll eventually give.
Yep.
Yeah. And we have actually a phenomenal problem right now. I'm going to say problem, but opportunity, in that we have so many women because of Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy who are raising their hands to say, help me, tell me how I can become more engaged. How can I help? How can I be involved with the university? And it's because they've heard of Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy and they want to be a part of it. And they want to know, how can I make a difference? And we have more people right now than we have opportunities. So part of our challenge is we've got to find those opportunities of getting these women engaged. So it's a wonderful thing to go tackle.
Yeah,
we're experiencing the same thing, Gayle. But you said something critical, and I think that was something neither you nor I had touched on in terms of advice. Women like to be asked. Men will just, they'll hear that something's happening. It's like, well, I'll leave that, or I'll be involved with that. Women often wait to be asked. And so I think, to your point, almost as if, and we're talking about Gayle and Carme, the way you guys connected in some ways, that was a specific ask made to women that they knew that could get things done and could make things happen. And so that's one thing you do need to do, is be targeted about reaching out. And then, to your point, once the wheel starts to fly, the fly motion begins, now it's a matter of how do we're looking at, are there task forces that we want to create for specific initiatives that aren't necessarily part of our standing committees, but we have something that, boy, we could engage more women, that they could really be focused on this beginning, middle, and end project. And that also gives us a sense of what their leadership capabilities are, so we can get them into pipelines in various places as well.
Absolutely. And because we don't have a specific foundation or fund today with Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy, what we do is highlight those areas of greatest need that really support women across the university. And by doing that every year in our Day of Giving, these organizations have benefited tremendously because women go to our website and they go, okay, mental health, I can support that. I understand that. I'm going to give to that. So just by highlighting, women are saying, here I am, I'm ready to make a difference. So it's great.
And the
Yeah,
other thing
this
we
is
always focused on is that William and Mary, one of the things we love to talk about is our ampersand. So we talk a lot about that our William and Mary students are not just one thing. They're usually this and that. They're an econ major and they're a music major or whatever it happens to be. So one of the focuses when we created Society of 1918 was to make sure that it was an and to William and Mary, that it did not take away from anything of the resources that William and Mary was receiving, but actually amplified it. And it has in spades.
I just want to go back to something you both said that I think is so important. You know, when you think about getting a program like these started, you really, truly, as you said, you have to have the backing of the leadership. The other thing, you have to make sure, whether it's more staff or a staff person, those resources to keep and to make sure it's sustainable. I know I've worked with a lot of different clients who have tried starting programs with women philanthropists, and they didn't have the resources, nor did they have the commitment to continue, and it failed. And that's not a good place to be if you try to get something like that started again. So I think that's truly, truly important, what you both said. And I can just say for myself, I joined the society fairly early on, and as soon as somebody asked me to join the steering committee, I just raised my hand. But you're right, I didn't immediately come and say, I want to do this. And Gayle, I was with you all when you first started too. You had the chancellor's wife there. You had an amazing group of women that you went through some retreats trying to build the program, and look where it's gone now. So both these programs are something we should be so proud of. And is there anything else that you want to share before we kind of wrap this up? You've given so much great information.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing is we work very closely with what we call Women Ready, the advancement team, to find out what the greatest needs are and what the resources and the strategic vision of the president and et cetera, and then try to highlight those things and are helping to your point, Gayle, trying to educate all the women of William and Mary, both more about the needs of the university, the impact that they can make as well, and also just how for them to be to look at their philanthropy. One of the things that we've been trying very hard to get is for women to say to others, I'm a philanthropist. I write a check to William and Mary or I give to William and Mary. I am a philanthropist, and that is a very different. It's a very powerful phrase. And so trying to get that all the way down to the very youngest givers who maybe they give $5 to the university, but you're a philanthropist. You are giving to and through an organization to make an impact in others. So I think that's something that we are laser focused on and trying very, very hard to broaden that all the time.
I guess the only message that I would have is to be bold, be unapologetic about your philanthropy. And be a model for others, because people do watch what we do as women. So we have to support other women. We have to support the university. And I'll just share, Carme mentioned at the beginning that my husband and I gave for us a large contribution to women's athletics. In everything else that we've done, it's always been in the name of my husband and myself. It's just, I'm old fashioned that way. Well, this one was very important to me to send a message to other women that they can be leaders and make decisions about what they do and how they support the university. So our gift was to women in athletics, and then it was named the Gayle and Dwayne scholarship or locker room, because we wanted to send a strong message that women can lead, women should lead, and women step up, be bold, aspire higher, be good.
I love that. I want to just add with that, it's interesting when we were formulating the Society of 1918, it was interesting because there was a lot of conversations with would we have male members as well as female members. And there was I mean, we had long conversations about this, and we finally ended up with, and I didn't realize how strongly I felt about it, very much that I wanted to be a women's only organization, especially in terms of the steering committee and leadership, et cetera. This is the first time in my life, in my professional life, in terms of this type of organization, that I walk into a meeting and it's all women. That I walk into any kind of a committee and it's all women. And I can tell you, it changes the dynamic. It changes the conversations. It changes our focus. And I love that. I love empowering other women. I love seeing women in leadership and seeing a lot of us, Susan and I both are about to rotate off. We're the founding members of this organization, and we've done our term limits and we're about to move off. And what is so amazing is the next generation is stepping right up, and they're a good generation younger. And I am just beyond the moon thrilled and excited to see these women stepping forward and owning their leadership and owning the impact that they're going to make. So just incredibly exciting.
Awesome.
Carme, do you want to say anything else before we wrap up?
No, this has just been great. I love the fact that women have been empowered in this space with their philanthropy, and that institutions are taking it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important, the message for generations to come, to see that these are sustainable programs that are supporting women, giving to women, supporting women, is just a great message to send. You cannot get that affirmation enough, I think, for women to hear that.
Our conversation today has been so inspiring. Gayle and Janet, thank you so much for joining Carme and me. It is very clear that you share our passion about the difference women can make collectively through their philanthropy. We trust that by hearing your stories and about these two women philanthropy group, North Carolina State University's Wolfpack Women in Philanthropy and William and Mary Society of 1918, listeners understand the power of creating programs to bring women philanthropists together. If you have additional questions or would like just to talk through what you might be considering with your institution or nonprofit, feel free to reach out to Carme and me. And thank you all again.